Hey, it's Curious here. I'd like to talk about cultural nostalgia because I think a big part of why I talk about the counterculture and my disdain for it isn't solely about the issues and the politics around them, whether it's liberal or progressive or economic or social. Some of it is cultural nostalgia and the late 60s. I, I like the early 60s. I think the early 60s were pretty cool. Before the Beatles had the long hair, I liked that era. And then it switched right in the middle back into a long hair and back to the earth and cheap art, and I didn't like it. I liked the black bowl cut and the go-go boots and the weird but psychedelic clothing. Not the not the hippie type, but the hipster type. You know, the shirts with the lapels that went all the way across, the double buttons, all that, the Austin Power thing. You know, I thought that was pretty groovy. And so when people talk about the 60s, I really get the feeling they're talking about the Summer of Love and the almost, well, would you say Native American? Ish? I don't know. It's kind of medieval or Renaissance like, wouldn't you say? Long hair, draping clothes, things such. And that's why I like the 30s, 40s, and 50s, and early 60s. Because to me, it it set the modernist tone. And I could just see how things might have been just a little bit different. Oh, of course, I'm a big fan of Googie architecture and stuff, so, to me, the Sky Dome and the the encounter at the LAX is just, that's just the that's just the cat's meow right there. I wish every building across the United States and the world was like that. That would be great. That's just too cool. And I like some of the politics about it. What some people say about the 60s that shows up in the cultural expression, like the art and the architecture, I do like the 30s, 40s, and 50s. Like, I forget the name of it, but that building that was in New York, I think it's a Chrysler building. No, maybe not. I don't know. The one that you see in the beginning of Sex and the City. The one with the ridges and the tower. I like that. I like the Ghostbusters building. Although that's a little bit more gothy and not really googie. Of course, googie is 50s car architecture, roadside architecture. So that's only part of what I'm talking about. Now, in the 40s, I don't know. Some of it was interesting. Um, some of the art, the military mostly, the uniforms, all that. Everything had a badge and an insignia and a symbol. That was interesting. because that was kind of Star Trek-like in a way. In a sense, I guess it couldn't be more opposite, but, I find that interesting. And in the 50s, well, the 50s was the Atomic Theater. And the reason the Atomic Theater holds such a vast interest to me was because as I read some of the literature, from science fiction to the science fact to the science speculation, and of course the conspiracy theorists that all say we're going to have clean energy and such. If atomic energy in that time would have been made clean, I can't even begin to imagine the potential in the way society would have changed. Maybe we wouldn't be here. Of course, we probably wouldn't have personal computers. We would have huge computers that we would have outlets to. But who knows if a little bit of alternate science didn't make the technology and the society that forms around it completely different. So, I do have a nostalgia, a cultural nostalgia for these times. Not because of the 30s racism, the 40s warmongering, or the 50s almost collectivist police state, but because of the high marks of all of those. And when everybody goes, oh, the 60s were so great, yeah, the early 60s, when things could have been different, not the things when it all went left and dissolution in the 70s and 80s, and in the 90s were just bad imitations of 70s movies. Let's see, 20 years before we knew it would go bad, we were making cheap Italian films knowing how it would go bad. What the hell is that? I can remember reading a comic book. They used to have this comic book called Epic. I think it was Epic. It was by Marvel. But it was more of adult illustrated short stories. It really wasn't the superhero thing. It was more graphic novel. And in one, they were talking about the resource wars in the Middle East. And how many times have we foreshadowed 9/11? I mean, they said in 2001 the whole world would change. It wouldn't be 2000 because that wasn't the end of the time. It would be 2001 because that would be the end of 2000. That would be when the great change happened. Well, I can't believe in a supernatural thing because I don't believe in any supernatural things. But, I mean, still, maybe we have a collective super subconscious psyche among humanity. And 9/11 was the big changer, I just wonder. I mean, and that's why I want to live in a world where Democrats are FDR and Republicans are like Eisenhower. Of course, history romanticized these individuals when perhaps in modern day they wouldn't have been romanticized at all. Such as like Kennedy. Kennedy nowadays would have been Clinton. So, any case, that's why a lot of times I have my political views I do, is some of it isn't totally political. Some of it's cultural. Some of it's just taste. You know, I'd like to see less flower power and more, I don't know, radiant energy. That's all. Here's out.